can't even see the screen. The brightness.
Better?
Thank you. Ready? Madam Speaker, the best way to give somebody an identity free from the stigma of poverty is to get them out of poverty and give them a job with which they can provide for their families. There's only one side of the House that does this for you in this debate, and that's why Proposition will win it. I'm going to crystallize this debate through 3 questions. First, which side of the House best alleviates the poverty of the individual? Second, which side of the House better addresses the needs of the community? And finally, which side preserves the choice that opposition so cherishes? But first question, which side best alleviates the poverty of the individual? And what opposition tells you on this is that if people are more passionate about the field that they're going to go into, they're going to be more successful. The problem is, regardless of how passionate you are, if there aren't jobs that you can go into, you're not going to be able to get that job. But more importantly, regardless of how passionate you are, if you're coming out with only a high school liberal arts degree, that is not going to be able to let you become a lawyer. Opposition has tried to mischaracterize this for you as telling you that we're stopping people from becoming lawyers. No, we're not stopping people from becoming lawyers. We're giving people the job in the first place because when they come out of high school with a liberal arts education, but they don't have the money to pursue post-secondary education, they don't have the ability to upskill that degree to actually turn it into something that will be useful. That means that not only are they not becoming a lawyer, but they're stuck with liberal arts high school education that isn't going to be able to provide them any sort of meaningful employment besides maybe working at McDonald's and making minimum wage. We want to give these people a better future and a better opportunity. Apparently opposition doesn't. What we told you on our side of the House that we do to uplift people from poverty is we provide them employment right out of high school and make it so they don't have to go to university in order to get the education to make their high school degree worthwhile. But what their second speaker told you on this is, what about all of the countries that give post-secondary education free? First thing, Canada doesn't give post-secondary education free. And second, even in cases where they give normal post-secondary education free of charge, they don't give the kinds of graduate degrees that are a necessity to make these kind of liberal arts degrees be worthwhile. My first speaker brought you the analysis about how people who graduate from university with sociology or psychology degrees are more unemployed than any other major. Because in order to turn that into something that's effective, they need to get a doctorate in those areas. Those aren't given free of charge in countries that give free post-secondary education. Okay, so we better uplift people from poverty. What about the second question? Which side better addresses the needs of the community as a whole? And what Bree brought for you on this, and really didn't go responded to, was that there is a need for vocational skills under the status quo that isn't being filled. They just made this assertion coming back at us, saying, no, people go into vocational skills under status quo anyway. First things first, not true. There is a need developing for new vocational skills. For instance, in British Columbia, if one LNG plant goes live, the entire industrial construction sector will be tapped because all of the people who are available will need to work on that project. We're trying to industrialize certain parts of the world. That requires that you increase the labor force that is available for that industrialization. That means that even if the need is filled right now, we need more people for those positions in the future. But the second lines of analysis that we brought for you on how we uplift the entire community is because we give these people jobs and alleviate the poverty that keeps them down. We think this went really unresponded to because they failed to show for you why giving a person a job right out of high school doesn't have a tangible effect on the community as a whole. We need to hear a response out of their third speaker if they want to win this point. But what did they tell you on addressing the needs of the community? So, first thing that they told you about was that we need to eliminate the stigma and preserve their culture, and this is the overriding need of these impoverished communities. We have 3 responses to this. First, the overriding need of impoverished communities is not to preserve their culture, It is to get out of poverty and be able to provide for themselves. It's nice if you can preserve your culture in the process of doing that. But it is far more important that you can provide for your family and can provide for yourself. We think after you have reached the point where you can provide for yourself and you can provide for your family, we're happy with giving you the ability to preserve your culture. We're not exclusive to that on our side, but we think the priority should be allowing these people to survive in the first place. But second thing we told you, onto this stigma point. We think the stigma exists on their side of the house too, but the stigma is far worse, because the stigma of poverty and being seen as society as the leech of the state who has to depend on government handouts is far worse than the stigma of being a tradesman who is able to put food on the table for your family. But more than that, we think there is also a stigma of vocational training on their side of the house. So even if their analysis about people who go into vocational training under status quo is true, they still stigmatize them because they don't allow the government to normalize this behavior. Go ahead.
You must understand that with 100% of the graduating class in high school going into one trade or vocational skills, surely there will be too much labor for the demand.
Okay, first things first, the entire class is not going to go into a single profession. People don't all want to become carpenters or all want to become electricians. People will diversify their skill base into which specific section of vocational skills that they want to go into. We're not going to be oversaturating the industry. Okay. But what we tell you even more on this is that if you really want to preserve somebody's culture, you need to preserve their financial well-being. Because when someone has to choose between making a decision based off of their cultural identity or making a decision based off of what will best provide for their family, they're going to choose the latter every single time. So if you want to preserve culture, you first need to uplift their economic standing to allow these individuals to make that calculus to preserve their culture first. Okay, third question. Which side of the house better preserves choice? And this is kind of the principle that opposition is trying to stand on in this debate, that the government shouldn't restrict students' choice to pursue whatever they want to pursue. But what we told you on our side of the house is that A, this happens under status quo. The government doesn't let you study neurobiology in high school because A, that's probably not going to be incredibly effective. But B, we also tell you that their only response to this was, this goes too far, without providing you any analysis as to where that line was and what is too far and what isn't too far. But our third response to this is, the government is allowed to restrict choices that they believe are actively against the interests of the individual, and when the individual is structurally unable to make the right decision. That's what happens on our side of the house. We think students can't decide what is the best future for them and what is the best option for them. Madam Speaker, our side of the house best uplifts the individual and provides for the needs of the community. We are proud to propose.